everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. My name's Emilio. I'm here, the host of Growth Wire Podcast. And today we have an absolute legend with us, Mr. Ted White, CEO of Vertical Talent Solutions. How you doing, man?
Emilio, I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for coming on and spending some time with us today. We got some pretty interesting topics, that we're going to be talking about today as far as like becoming an MSP or wanting to work for an MSP. If you're kind of just getting your hands dirty in the tech side of the equation, you're like, dang, this MSP stuff working for one seems pretty cool. Ted is probably your guy. That's kind of what he specializes in. But on top of that, too, kind of digging into, Ted's past and how he got to where he's at today. He told me he has some interesting stories to share with us. So we'll definitely dabble into those. And also like the 2025 plans, 2026, where do you see, vertical talent solutions going and how you want to expand it? But yeah, I'll hand the mic off to you, Ted.
Cool. Again, I'm excited to be here, and that was a lot, but luckily I kind of drew a little picture in my head as to navigating this conversation a little bit. So if this, then this, So everything's going great. I feel fantastic. I'm really grateful to be focused in the MSP industry. Not only do I we get along with every customer, well, most customers and most candidates that we have. It's just a pleasure working with a group that knows the value that we bring in finding good people to support the growth of their businesses. It's a win-win-win scenario, and we absolutely love what we do.
Yeah, definitely. And I know we were talking off camera about this, but as far as the people that you want to work with, talk to us a little bit about that relationship and the importance of having that relationship to grow with somebody. That's that win-win-win that you were talking about.
Oh, definitely, yeah. So most of the MSPs, common denominator is they're looking for great people. They're looking for people that are going to be a cultural fit for their organization, that they're going to
Hmm.
fit with who they have in the team, and they're looking for troubleshooters, people who know how to solve problems, and they're curious and they enjoy doing these things. These are the same people that are looking for the people that want to help them grow their business used to be those people. So they grew up as technicians, admins, engineers, and then suddenly figured, "Well, I should probably do something about all these companies and businesses reaching out to me to help them fix things with their computer systems." So your first question about how trying to help maybe entry level find the MSP, like find a career in this thing is I think we want to capture that earlier on. So if you have MSPs listening to this, one of the takeaways I would say is definitely develop a relationship with the local tech community colleges and find, the professors who handle, some of the topics that are applicable to their business. And third, build a relationship with that professor. Of course, there are career services and there are outplacement services, but if you build a relationship with that professor, and that professor would be more than happy to tell you who his or her top three, five candidates, classmates are, students are in the class that MSP should talk to. So even further than that, so that's for MSPs. Start that entry level pipeline so that you don't have to use me to hire those experienced people. Maybe use me occasionally. So then you go into the candidate side. You have to like go even before that. The MSPs have to get in front of those candidates because I'll tell you what, if I knew at 19, 20 that I could do this, work at an MSP for a living and not have to deal with trying to, get my 4-year degree, I would have done this. I was right out of college, got my degree, University of Connecticut, and started a job at a recruiting agency. And anytime somebody had an issue with their computer, I was the guy that would go and help them out. Now, this is like level one stuff, real easy stuff.
Hmm.
All right, is your computer plugged in and that kind of thing. But if they had issues with like a Word or Excel or just general stuff, I would help them. And I'm like, man, I would love it if I could get paid to do this kind of thing. I just love it. But I loved it, and I think about it and I say, it's because of I was solving problems. I was helping people resolve problems, and I did it rather quickly. And I find out that the candidates we work with are very similar. And those candidates are now, fast forward 10, 15 years, are now business owners of MSPs, and they're troubleshooters. And I'll tell you that they all have one of these things in common. They're an athlete, an artist. They play a guitar, they play some kind of an instrument. They love to solve crossword puzzles. They build things, they fix everything in their house, they work on cars. Um, these are people that know the value of time as well. They're efficient. If they're like me, if I do errands on a Saturday, I go in like a clockwise fashion. If you look down on the earth, I go in so I can take rights because taking lefts, no matter where you are, isn't good or efficient. So if you just start the right and even have to work your way like a snail, it'll be more than going from here to here to here to here. So I guarantee that the majority of MSPs that are listening to this are saying, that guy understands our industry. He totally gets it. And that's why I love working with in this industry. I worked in corporate, I was a corporate recruiter, I was in corporate HR leadership, and it just didn't do it for me. Every day
Mm.
I was wondering if I was gonna put out like a health shake stand in the corner of, one of the streets in Hartford, just selling health shakes,
Hmm.
open up a cupcake business, flip houses, start a recruiting company. And the coolest thing is the last company I worked for paid for me to take classes for my MBA. And the first class I took, my boss at the time, he was fantastic, best boss I've ever had. He says, Ted, I think you're doing a great job. I think if you got your MBA, you'd be, fulfilling a lot of what you want to do. My first class was the marketing class. They had me do a business plan. I'm like, geez, what am I going to do this thing on?
That's awesome. That's
I
awesome.
I wrote out a 13-page business plan to start a recruiting business,
Wow.
and it went textbook to that plan. It went,
That's crazy.
yeah, I'm talking like the first year, 2 years, first 2 years, right on the money, with some adjustments, of course. Different industries. I thought I was going to do something else and did something completely different. I never really said I was going to go into business and be an IT recruiter. I was actually going to go into business and do some other non-technical recruiting. And then the story just weaves its way into, hey, my network is only so big. I've been like tapping into people that I used to work with that actually like me. So those are the people that got me into business with them. And and then I did some marketing, had to figure out how to do marketing. And we did that like right before COVID. We started doing a lot of things that we can, delegate automation and that kind of thing, and doing more research and getting better and better and better at it, and doing more marketing and outreach and making cold calls. And for one of the 10 cold calls, I'll call people on Fridays. So a little tidbit. I when we're calling candidates, these are people that are not even looking at this point. They don't know who we are most of the time. They might have remembered connecting with us on LinkedIn or something, but usually
Mhm.
they don't know. So we reach out to them in many different ways, because there's all these different channels to do so. There's like email, there's LinkedIn, there's InMails, LinkedIn messages, texting, phone calls, and all that stuff. Um, so regardless, let's see, where was I? This is going into, where was I on the MBA? The first customer, we called this customer for this MSP, and they're like, "Yeah, we're a small business too. Why don't you come on down?" So I drove down and met with them, and I'm like, "This is pretty damn cool. I got a good vibe." I'm like, "Hell yeah!" Like, I can't believe I found the only company on the planet that's like this. Literally, in my head, I had no clue that there was 38,000 MSPs in this country. until after we took them from 20 employees to 65 employees in about 4 or 5 years when they were able to become a much larger company, which is called Compass MSP.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
That's a really big growth over 3 years.
IT Direct was my first customer, and I loved working with IT Direct. I could talk to anybody and not be anxious. I had an anxiety issue for a long time, but I could talk to anybody at IT Direct and not be anxious and be completely 100% myself. And that wasn't always the case with, let's say, an insurance company, just to be real
Mm.
general, or just in corporate. Like the people at IT Direct were real, and I loved hanging out with them. They would invite me to social gatherings, like different types of parties, to baseball games, and uh, the Hartford baseball team. So yard goats. So we got to know each other really well, and the more I got to know them, the more I got to know the type of candidates that they needed. And we were just like churning and helping each other build this recruiting program that worked, and it was troubleshooting. And it's both like really, like-minded businesses saying, all right, let's collaborate. Let's team up and figure out how to do this thing. And we did, and we just keep making it better and better and better and better. My thing is statistically proven, we've proven it. Tapping on the shoulder of a candidate that's working at a current managed service provider is the best way to fill an open position at a company that's hiring, an MSP that's hiring. Here's why. And having a pipeline, developing a pipeline, a simmer list, as we would say, having that readily available pipeline. If you're just hiring one position right now, you get that person right now, of course, but in that approach, while looking for that person and reaching out to them, you're also reaching out to all the other good people that look like at some point these are people that you are going to place because you've placed people like them in the past. So you just do a general outreach, and then you get somebody and you're like, what? That guy was awesome. Like 5 years experience, had general IT experience, and like upbeat personality, could definitely talk to customers, got on the call at the right time, was on time, checks all the boxes. Funny in a good way, checks that box, likable, hungry, humble, smart is what they would say. So you get that candidate and you're like, hey, while looking for the candidate for your first job, we came across this guy. I know he's like a little bit more senior, um, just by a little bit, or maybe a different skill set, but we think you'd like him. So then you can decide whether or not you're like, hey, you know what, we're going to hire this person instead, or we're going to hire the lower level first, but we're going to tell this guy, hey man, we actually want to hire you when when we get this new customer that we're going to be talking to. We're inking a deal right now, and as soon as that deal gets done, we want to bring you back in the office, just kind of introduce you to some people, and hopefully the timing will be much better then for both of us. So you get that, you keep that candidate, you maybe stay in touch with that person, and then when, hey, not looking right now, not looking right now, not looking right now. But then, hey, Ted, I'm so glad you called, man. I couldn't remember what your last name was. All I knew was Ted, and I have like 15 Teds in my phone. I don't know why, but Ted's just a damn popular name. And then you're like, but on the other side, I'm like, Dan, if they've never heard from me, Dan, who's this? Dan, this is Ted White. And it's, you just leave it silent, right? Yeah, you just kind of let it pause, but not for too long. Ted White, LinkedIn, you and I were kind of chatting. Um, I'm so excited that I got you on the phone. I can't believe it. I want to talk to you about this. Is it a bad time, or do you want to schedule some other time? Oh, now's a good time? Awesome. Let me talk to you about this company. And then it come to find out that these candidates, they don't have room to grow at their current MSP. Every
Mhm.
single candidate that I've placed ever has not had room to grow at their current company. That is the reason. Of course, there's managers and, compensation and stuff, but when it all comes down to it, a bad manager is not allowing a person to grow. So you can kind of say the commonality is room to grow. On the other side, I'm like, hey, new client. Yeah, we just signed up with you. Congratulations. You now have a career plan for everybody that you bring on board. And they're like, what? What? You're like, even if you didn't, here's what the way things are going to go. I'm going to talk to you about helping, working with these people and make sure that we're communicating before when they accept their offer, before they start, during their onboarding in their first 30, 60, 90 days, in their first 6 months, and, in the first 2 to 3 years. And you're going to say, this is where, in these first 30 days, we're going to then talk to you about your KPIs and what you think you can contribute to the company. And then in these between 3 to 6 months, we're going to talk to you about um, giving you feedback on your performance, where you're at, where you're adding value, and then ask you what you want to do more of and figure out a way that we could harness what you're good at doing and what you're interested in doing at our company so that you never want to leave. And I say, customer, you good with that?
Yeah. And I think you bring up such a good point there because it's a lot like a game of chess. You know, not everybody's going to be a bishop. Somebody's going to be a rook. Somebody's going to be a knight. You got to understand how different people operate differently. And in a lot of companies, when they don't do that, they lose amazing talent because you're trying to play a rook like a bishop, and that's never going to happen. So having that insight on the company side, I think is going to help them essentially extracting the most out of their clients and empowering them in their realm to deliver the best product for the company. I think that's imperative.
Yeah. When somebody cares about what they're doing, it's a game changer.
hmm And Ted, as far as your company, for any MSPs watching this, that are kind of like on the fence, like, this guy Ted seems awesome, but I could probably just put out a LinkedIn post and I'll get probably a ton of people asking me for the job. Walk me through your thought process. Why should an MSP work with you, Ted?
An MSP or maybe a candidate.
A candidate, sorry.
Yeah. So a candidate's gonna what they get, what they see is what they get type of thing. We're straight
Mhm.
shooters. That should be another part of our tagline. We're not just recruiters, troubleshooters, and straight shooters. That's what we are, right? So normally when I'm not talking, I get right to the point, especially when it's business and it's serious. I like to have quick, uh, you know, let's say efficient exchanges. And if I find that I'm going to add that candidate value, like, yeah, you are in fact you are in fact at a point where there is no room to grow. You've been at this salary for how long, or you have this many years of experience, and I'll just kind of tell them, well, we normally will place a candidate with your experience in these locations at this salary, and we'll give them all the data, and the data will confirm if we can work with that person. If they're making 60 grand or looking for 60 grand, and we have a company that will pay them a little bit more than that for this, more than that if their salary is low, probably by 10-20%. That's what, and an average kind of, we don't really ask current salaries. We just give what's available in the market and what companies
hmm
will pay. And the best is the, the best candidates that we work with are reasonable. They know that they can't shoot too high. A system admin shouldn't be asking for 120 or so. But I know they do. I know that's out there, and I know recruiters try to represent people for a higher salary, but it's a huge mistake. It's a huge mistake because if you're actually capable of placing somebody at a higher salary that is not worth that money, the target will be on their back from day one, and the likelihood of success is very, very low. So, do you want that target? Because I could certainly try my best to get you a really good, we don't even have to say that because
Yeah.
the candidates are like, yeah, nah, they even tell me and they tell us their salary or they don't. They just say, yeah, I'm looking for like 75, 80. I'm like, you're, that's where you should be. that's where you should be, and I'm confident we're going to help you out. Or we don't have anything right now, but let's stay in touch. It's either or. Um,
Yeah.
and we put if they're a fit for a job we're working on right now, we give them real high level, the most important information on that MSP, around their culture, around the job, of course, and the other perks, along with, why to work for the company. So putting those two things together, the candidates should work with us because we're straight shooters for real. Like, we don't want to put people in bad positions. We're one of those companies that actually doesn't want to place people that won't last. That a lot
Hmm.
of them are going for that first win. That's not the win. The win is when your customer is like Ted, like 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, 3 years later, being like, these people that you placed are awesome. That is the win.
Yeah, definitely.
And then the same thing from the candidates. Ted, like they see me, and if they am in Connecticut and I see some of the people that we've placed, I don't care whatever's coming out of my mouth, they'll just like interrupt and be like, dude, I love this place, you know?
That's how you know you did a good job.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. How could what else is there to do? What else would there be to do than do this? This is awesome.
Yeah. It's that win, win, win. You changed everybody's life for the better. And
Yeah.
that's what's imperative. I mean, you know how much of America says, I love my job? Not much of it. And the fact that you're helping people out every single day, it's monumental what you're doing.
And I can see why these guys and women like their jobs. I love their jobs. I can see why.
Hmm. Well, Ted, thank you so much for your time today. And thanks for all the insight too. It's really interesting seeing it from your perspective, how the market moves and what the most important things are in, looking for a job, acquiring a job and all of that. Because I think one important point before we end the podcast is not having that target on your back either for, shooting way out the ballpark, how some recruiters will do. That's kind of, chopping your Achilles heel before you started your journey, if you really think about it. I think that's something people need to give a little bit more thought into, as opposed to just going, oh, this recruiter gave me 130, you only gave me 110.
Yeah.
It's probably not going to pan out the best of ways.
It's like selling a house. That's kind of happened on our first house that we sold. I remember getting three kind of quotes or estimates or whatever, and one was super high, one was in the middle, and one was super low. And we went with the one in the middle. That was my strategy. But the one that was high, I was like, you must be high, because that is like absurd. There's no way we're getting that money for this house. Have a good one. And they were referred to me by the company I was working with at the time.
Oh, that's funny. But yeah, Ted, thank you so much for spending some time with us today, showing us that knowledge. And I just want to let any MSPs know out there, if you guys are struggling to find talent, Ted is your guy, And on top of that too, if you're on the other side of the equation, you're in an MSP right now, you're not seeing the growth that you'd like, reach out to Ted. He's an amazing guy to chat with. He's not going to bite you. He's a really cool dude to chat with. I'm going to leave all Ted's information down there kind of in the comment section under the podcast when we do post it. But until then, guys, I'll catch you guys in the next episode. I really appreciate you guys watching this. Thank you.